All right, so you guys know technology is one of the big factors that's going to either make or break your business here in the next few years. And it's one of those things that I think, over time as consumers, we've really embraced a lot of these changes. It'll be interesting to see how we embrace changes that we're going to be talking about today, and that is technology actually scanning you. A little minority report here. My name is Paul Barron, and this is the Barron Report. So I want to introduce our guest today, and that's Daniel Putterman, who is the CEO of Kogniz. Now, Kogniz is a company that is doing some very interesting things. So I just want to jump right into it with you, Daniel. Tell us a little about Kogniz and what you guys are up to.
Sure, thanks, Paul. Well, Kogniz is a platform designed to provide real-time information to people related to health and safety. And we've started the foundation offering is around real-time body temperature measurement. We're trying to get out of these single file lines, and more importantly, the way thermal technology is being used is actually flawed. When you come into, for example, a restaurant from the outside, if it's cold out, your skin is cold. And without AI and software, we're going to have incorrect readings all day long. So right. it's really about getting back to normal.
Yeah, that's been one of the big discussion points here on our show is talking about, what are we going to do with consumers and guests that are coming back into restaurants, retail locations, all kinds of service businesses across America. The number one factor is are you letting someone in that is actually sick? And that's a big concern, obviously, with not only the fact that we've seen, scenarios here where it can actually cause a problem for the retail outlet. I'm kind of curious, when you look at line diffusion, which is really kind of what you guys are talking about, this eliminates the requirement for someone to stand in line and, get one of those contactless laser temperature things to let you in or out. I know we do it even our kids going to summer camp this year was including those kinds of entry points. So this is a technology that's scanning you, thermal scanning a person and determining if they have fever. Is that correct?
That's correct. And just imagine the experience. I mean, it's really a transformative experience. For me, the idea of going back into a restaurant and having someone measure my temperature with a forehead gun doesn't sound like a great aperitif, if you will. So what we're doing is we're allowing the free flow of people back into an environment. And then if someone does have a fever, we'll send a message to the correct person on the team, and they can figure out how to go up to that customer, or whether it's a customer or staff member, and decide what to do next.
Yeah, I could definitely see this being a technology that definitely could be used for staff, just in the sense that, restaurant or even in some busy places like even a grocery store where you have lots and lots of people coming and going in different shifts, things of that nature. It's easy to kind of get caught up and lose the ability to make sure that you've got, workers there that aren't sick. So that's going to be an interesting factor, I think, as you guys deploy out. All right, so obviously Kogniz wasn't built for this. It rolled into something that is kind of adapting to what's happening here with the pandemic. What was Kogniz, your original theory and your original business model designed around in terms of this type of technology?
Right. Well, we certainly didn't predict the pandemic, so I won't take any credit for that, nor would I want to. But ironically, the platform was built just for this. It's real-time video analytics. It's designed to see precision elements of bodies, of faces, of objects. And so when we think about taking the temperature of a person moving in real time, we have to first track the person, then we have to get the head, and then be able to look at certain parts of the face, whether that's the corner of the eyes where certain glands are, or a hot spot on the forehead, and then be able to take measurements in real time as that person is moving. So while thermal measurement wasn't the original plan, certainly watching and making sense of the people was. And it's the only way we were able to deploy so quickly. So it's really very serendipitous.
So facial recognition technology was kind of, and I guess body in some cases now, because you're in some countries. Now, if you look into Asia, now we have masks, so there's been adjustments for full physical scans. I've seen some stuff coming out of Korea. I'm kind of curious with this, because if you look at Europe, Europe's been using cameras and this type of facial recognition technology for quite some time. Do you see this potentially moving out of the retail sector and restaurant and hospitality sector and into broad line use around society in general?
Well, my opinion is, if you recall, and I think this is a fair analogy, pardon me, after 9/11, the world changed permanently. Airports
Sure.
will never be the same. And we adjusted. We adjusted to that new normal. And I think with this situation, one is we don't know how long this particular pandemic is going to go on for. Some scientists are now saying into 2023 before things are normal. And then there's obviously the concern of the next one, because it would be naive to suggest that another one won't ever come. So I think that protecting this new normal, having automated tools to protect our environments, it's going to become the standard. It's not going to become the standard by people standing in a single file line with a gun held to their head. That certainly is not the new normal. But I believe that every facility across the globe will have some form of temperature screening. And it's not just temperature screening. I mean, the camera can give us a lot of information. So one of the things that we do, for example, is we give highly accurate person counting information. I can tell you at any point in time how many people are in a building, how many people are in a restaurant. If we have an area that we're concerned about, for example, maybe a lounge area, I can enforce, I can say at that, in this lounge, I never want to have more than 12 people because we've deemed that unsafe from a congestion perspective. So AI can give us a lot of information. And I think providing that information in the same way we have a fire alarm or any other kind of security system, this is it's EHS automation, and we're all going to have it.
Yeah. So when you look at kind of the scenario beyond the technology and moving into consumer, awareness of this technology being used in retail outlets, what has been your case of understanding kind of that I won't say consumer acceptance, but them and their reaction to this technology being used, maybe without them knowing? So I guess the question is, how does a retailer or a guest restaurant operator kind of advise people that, hey, we're scanning your temperature all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be a context switch, and it's going to become, the question's not going to be about, privacy and concerns about getting our temperature read. It's going to be concerned of not having our temperature read. In other words, that I'm not going to feel safe going into a facility unless I know they're doing everything possible to keep things healthy and safe. And so with respect to temperature screening, there are two ways to offer it. When you fly, and if you have over the last 10 or 15 years, if you fly, for example, into the Narita airport in Japan, you pass by a quarantine station and they take your temperature and they show you that your temperature is being taken. And that's one way, is to communicate openly to people that your temperature is being taken. The other is to not, in the same way that we have surveillance cameras in most organizations, and people or consumers and visitors don't see the surveillance cameras in real time. But if an incident happens, then it's addressed with a security personnel or the right individual who's going to handle it. And there's a discussion that happens with the person, for example, who was seen, if in a surveillance situation, it's maybe a problematic situation. In a fever situation, it's one where the person might be sick. So I think both scenarios are acceptable, and it just really depends on the environment and, frankly, the protocols of the establishment as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the question when you're going, if you're in a public place. Obviously, when you go into a restaurant, you're kind of moving into a space that's, you feel a little bit more centered in the sense that this is a private facility. You're maybe not necessarily anticipating those kinds of measurements being in place. Because I do know, we've had some restaurants, even here in Miami, where we're based, where they've asked them to actually take, and it also happened in Austin, where they've asked the restaurants to actually take down the names and phone numbers of any restaurant or any person that came into the restaurant. So in case there was an outbreak, they could do contact tracing, those kind of things. There was a lot of pushback on that, both Miami and also in Austin. of consumers saying, hey, listen, that's, now you're going too far. I'm not willing to give up my private information. Do you feel like that could become an issue here with consumers saying, hey, I'm not really wanting to have my face scanned or my temperature taken to come in and eat at your restaurant?
Right, right. Well, I remember when after 9/11, when the new TSA guidelines went into place and everyone was upset and the lines were long and we thought, well, this is horrible. How long is this going to go on for?
Right.
And can you imagine how you would feel if all the security safeguards in an airport were taken down because hasn't been an attack for 5 years and the airport says, pardon me, that things are back to normal? We wouldn't, I personally wouldn't want to get on an airplane. And I think that that's going to be the new normal, going back, whether it's to work or a restaurant. And there's a second component of it that I think has to happen. There needs to be a change with respect to social responsibility, which is that contact tracing, it's an extra step. I have to give my name. People know how to reach me, but I'm doing this for the social good. It's no longer just me. It's actually for everyone else around me. And I think this is an opportunity for us to come together, in a very positive social way.
Yeah. All right. So let's go into social distancing, because your technology, as you had mentioned, has the ability to count and trace numbers, which is, as you know, in all states right now, we're at limited capacity in the restaurant industry. This is going to happen in the hotel industry. It's going to happen in conventions, all sorts of things as we move back to even going to mass gatherings, concerts, you name it. Is this a scenario where your technology could be implemented into control of how many people are in a facility and then have some sort of reporting back to authorities?
Right. So we do that today. We have extremely accurate person counting. So as people come and go, we know how many people are either in a facility at large or a space. And with some next generation camera technology that we're introducing, we can give very detailed information with respect to how the space is mapped out to make sure that we're enforcing guidelines and to get information back to the right people. But again, the whole point is, I look at, I talk to a lot of people with respect to going back to work, getting back to business. And as I tour these environments, there's a lot of blue tape on the floor. And the blue tape is just reminding us of the situation, the pandemic, right? So I'm always thinking about what could we do, whether it's temperature screening or whether it's social distancing, what can we do with tech so that the situation, it's still there, but it's kind of fading to background. Like, how about I get to go out to dinner, and I could forget about it for a little bit and just enjoy my food. So that's the way we're thinking about the tech.
Yeah. So, but being able to enforce that, because that's the issue I think that a lot of operators are concerned with. I went to a restaurant this weekend. I was surprised at how busy it was. And within, we got there around 6:30. I was surprised of how quickly the social distancing scenarios fell apart. And people started crowding into the bar. They were waiting up a little bit. It went from, 6 feet to 3 feet to 2. Before you know it, by 8 o'clock, the bar felt pretty normal. And I know there was a lot of people that were probably a little bit more uncomfortable with that. If you put a technology in there, you could see, all sorts of things, either scenarios of legal ramifications to the restaurant owner because they're not complying, which is going to be a factor. Do you see this technology being something that the government or legal authorities might come in and say, hey, just like a fire alarm system, you have to have it? Is this something that you think will eventually go to that level where you need to have this just because it's a requirement for getting a certificate of occupancy?
Right. So, as an example with our platform, one of the things that we do, and it's all configurable and optional, but we are able to record events. So, for example, an event could be someone getting their temperature screened. And then there's the ability to go back to that historical video, play the clip, share the clip, et cetera. And so you can imagine there's an incident. Well, in the traditional surveillance world, you might send this incident to a law enforcement team who takes a look at it. I'm not suggesting that temperature goes there, but I think the ability to go back in time, understand protocol, understand what's being done is important. And so what we've built is, instead of a point solution, whether that's social distancing or temperature monitoring, it's actually the entire platform is built on a video management system and notifications gateway. And so the idea is to have a platform that allows us to go back in time or to share and communicate with others. And I absolutely do. I think we're going to see not only requirements, but I also think we're going to see insurance plan cost reductions with
Yeah.
the implementation of this kind of technology as well. So in both directions.
Yeah. Well, the insurance companies have already moved into automation and tracking of vehicles that you can reduce if you opt in. And this will be interesting if this is an opt-in. Of course, consumers can always opt in by just either going or not going to a restaurant or any place that might have this technology. Obviously, that's your option. Curious, when you look at the technology itself, what all's involved? How many cameras do you put in a facility? Is it a huge server? What's the system's requirement for putting something in there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is a purpose-built solution, right? So everything. So with our camera, everything that you need is actually in the camera.
Okay.
And it is multi-person. It's continuous flow, and the first camera that we introduced has a lens that sees out to 16 feet. And so the rough field of view horizontally with our lens, with a 55-degree field of view, is about 17 feet. So it means within a 17-foot width, we're seeing everyone that's coming in real time and tracking those people with precision. So the idea, once again, is to have, so just to answer your question, so it's very straightforward to implement and integrate. And then let's suppose you're a restaurant franchise owner and you have 10 or 20 establishments, all those cameras roll up into a centralized environment, just like you would want with a traditional security system, and all those alerts are coming in, et cetera. So it really allows management by the whole team, not requiring someone standing by the camera, which is once again not only inefficient and expensive, but highlighting the fact that we're still in the middle of the situation.
Right, for sure. So it's a cloud camera, so to speak. The camera itself is the device. Is it sending all the data upline, and it's basically in the cloud?
Well, this is actually, so I'm excited. I'm a technologist, obviously, and so I'm very excited about the topology. It's an edge-based topology, and so the way it works is all of the core AI and machine learning that runs on the camera, and all of the video and photo storage is also in the camera as well. Then we have a cloud interface, and any data that we need that is about people or anything else that we're looking at, the video is not sent up, and in fact, the encrypted mathematical vectors that represent what we saw or who we saw is sent up to the cloud. So it's a privacy-first architecture. It's also a bandwidth-friendly architecture because a lot of our establishments, they're low bandwidth.
Sure. Yeah, that's going to be interesting because that right there, I think, is probably one of the unique elements of the technology, at least in my perspective, is if you've got low packet transactions that you're sending up, into the cloud that essentially are kind of the infrastructure of what the camera's picking up, and it's got local storage, that's going to be an excellent opportunity. And low cost because it's not sucking up the bandwidth which your customers are using, to post on Instagram and TikTok.
Exactly. Specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about, so requirements to activate something like this. Do you have this in the field today in restaurants as we speak?
So we are I will say we're going into some larger restaurant establishments. I'm excited about this. We started off initially managing corporate infrastructure, and now it's happening both on the restaurant side and also in the retail side as well, where same thing with retail. We started by protecting distribution centers and warehouses, and now we're actually starting to go into the stores. So it's happening as we speak, and the system itself, although we only released it 2 months ago, we have hundreds of systems in use right now, and that's growing very quickly.
So you guys are right at the beginning of your trek. All right, so let's talk about the last element, and that is and I think your explanation of this eventually will become just part of society and how it's rolling in there, which I think is great. How long do you think that's going to take? Are we talking maybe a year, 2 years? Is this something that like 9/11, where we dealt with almost an immediate impact on our airports? Do you feel like that is going to be how quickly we see this kind of technology rolled out?
It's happening right now, and I do think that look, this is a hard it's a hard situation to acknowledge, just the psychological impact of it as a
Right.
business owner. Right. I mean, we're all, we don't want this to go on. We all are in some degree of denial, I believe. And
Sure.
once we just accept that this situation is here and it's likely to be here for a very long time, then the rollout continues to happen. So, for us, it started critical infrastructure, warehouses, distribution centers, logistics, hubs, et cetera. They all rush to implement these solutions, and they still are. But the next wave of it is starting to go back to eat out, starting to go back to work.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
we're going to see a new wave of implementation of the tech. And I think it continues for some time.
For sure. Hey, I've got Daniel Putterman, CEO of Kogniz, on with us today talking about silent technology that's going to be out there taking your temperature. Thanks for stopping in on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Okay, so if you're listening in, maybe you're over on iTunes or over on Spotify, make sure and leave us a review. That's how we get our feedback from our great audience. And I love both the good and the bad comments. That's how at least I learn, and it's what we love in the sense of really understanding what you guys want to see here on the Barron Report. Also, if you have a great idea for a show or a guest that you want on the show, just shoot us an email to producer@foodabletv.com. And then lastly, hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on the Barron Report.